boys and girls, it is Miss Oaks from Gulfport School District, and today we're going to be talking about comparing and contrasting two different texts. Now, when you compare something, you are looking for how things are similar to one another. When you contrast something, you're looking for the differences. Have you ever looked at a highlights magazine such as this one? And inside highlights, they have all these sort of little puzzles. And one of my favorite puzzles to do is to look at an image that is almost exactly the same and see how the images are similar and see the differences as well. That's what you do when you compare and contrast two different texts. You're looking at the text and you're finding out which information is the same, but you're also looking for the information that is different. And that is what you do when you compare and contrast. So let's go ahead and get started.
Boys and girls, so we're going to be talking about comparing and contrasting informational text. So let's go ahead and get started by reviewing what is informational. Informational is a nonfiction text. So this would be a book about something real, such as an animal, a biography of a famous person, such as Alexander Hamilton, or a book about goats or cows that you kind of see in the background. So you would be learning something from a nonfiction book. And when an author writes a nonfiction book, they usually have some important points that they are trying to make, information that they're trying to share with you. So an important point is the most important details, facts, examples, and other pieces of information in a text. So remember when I showed you the highlights magazine and I showed you how those two pictures are similar? Where we're going to kind of do an exercise where we're going to compare and contrast the two pictures that you see on your screen. But before we get started, let's take a look at what this picture is about. What is the most important point in this picture? So looking at both of the pictures, I see a grandma and a little girl, and they are doing some sort of cake decorating. The little girl has what looks like a little bag and she's squeezing out some of the frosting. So the important point in this picture is obviously a pair baking a cake or decorating a cake in this case. So now that I see these two pictures together side by side, I'm going to compare them. And when I compare something, it is to describe how two or more things are similar. So some synonyms or words that kind of have the same meaning for comparing would be both, similarity, also, and same. So when you're reading a text and you see that both girls are wearing an orange shirt, you can tell that that means that's the same thing. So let's take a look at these two pictures and see if we can spot some similarities. Well, first off, I see a grandma in both pictures. And then there's also a little girl. And they're doing some sort of cake decorating, mind my circles. There's also a cat in both pictures as well. And then it looks like I have some fruit, some strawberries. It looks like some cookies out on a plate, and they're in the same setting. Looks like some sort of living room, maybe possibly dining room. So that is how these two things are the same in this picture. All right, now let's take a look at the differences by contrasting. And to contrast means to describe how two or more things are different. So some synonyms of contrast are but, however, yet, instead, and unlike. So now we're going to do the same exercise. We're going to look at these two pictures and we're going to decide what are the two differences. So let's take a look. Well, right away, I can see a difference. This grandma has a pin in her bun, while this grandma in this picture does not have a pin in her bun. All right, let's take a look. This little girl has her tongue sticking out, and she's like, that looks good. Let me do a better circle than that. All right, and then look at this one. This little girl's just smiling. She's happy, but I don't know, she may not be into the cake. All right, let's take a look at some other differences. Well, here's a big difference. There's 2 bananas on this table, while there's only 3 bananas on that table. All right, let's take a look at this cat. This cat is holding a spoon like she's ready to eat. This cat has a lollipop. Maybe she's wanting to decorate. I don't know. All right, some other differences. The time. This looks like it's about 2:30, but it looks like in this picture they're decorating the cake at 2:45. Oh, here's a couple other ones. There are different knobs. There's circle knobs on this cabinet over here, and yet there's heart knobs over here. And even here, down below the knobs, we have a bowl in this first picture. And then in this picture, looks like we have some dolls. So there are probably some other differences, but for the sake of time, I'm going to stop right here. But as you can see, not only did I find a lot of similarities in both of these illustrations, but there were also a lot of differences. All right, so are you ready to practice some more? And you might hear a little thunder in the background. We're about to have a little bit of a thunderstorm, so I do apologize. Now we're going to practice by looking into a text, and we're going to compare and contrast toads versus frogs, because toads and frogs are very similar to one another, but they're also very different. So we're going to take a look at this book that is found on Epic called Frogs and Toads by Johann Moulton. And I want you to listen as I read. We're going to only read a little bit of it, but I just want you to get an idea and look for some of those similarities and differences. Maybe you can spot them. Frogs or toad? Can you tell these two animals apart? One of these animals is a frog. The other animal is a toad. Frogs and toads have a lot in common, but they are not the same. Frogs and toads may look and act alike, but there are many things about them that are different. Let's learn all about these unusual animals that make each one special. Amazing amphibians. Frogs and toads are both amphibians. Amphibians have some interesting features. One important fact about amphibians is that they are cold-blooded. This means that they cannot control their body temperature. If an amphibian sits in the hot sun, its body temperature goes up. If it is a cold place, its body temperature goes down. To keep their body at the same temperature, amphibians often have to move in and out of the sun and find a cool place in the water or on the ground to cool off. The most interesting thing about amphibians is their life cycle. These animals go through some big changes as they grow up. A baby frog or toad does not look anything like an adult. Baby frogs and toads are called tadpoles. Tadpoles have no legs, but they do have a tail. Tadpoles also have no lungs. Instead, they have gills and breathe water just like a fish. Tadpoles live underwater, and as time passes, the tadpole's body changes. Its tail disappears, it grows 4 legs, and it develops lungs and starts breathing air. When the tadpole is an adult frog or toad, it can live on land. It takes some species of tadpoles just a few weeks to grow into frogs and toads. Other tadpole species take up to 8 months. So far in this book, I have learned that frogs and tadpoles are both amphibians. I've also learned that they both go through a similar life cycle. They start off as an egg, they grow into a tadpole, and then they become a tadpole with 2 legs, and then a tadpole with 4 legs until it becomes a frog or a toad. All right, different bodies. So now we're starting to get into some of the differences. So see if you can contrast these two. One way to tell an adult frog from a toad is to look at its body. Most frogs have a long, thin body. A frog's back legs are much longer than its front legs. Those long legs help the frog to be a great jumper. Frogs are good swimmers too. They often have webbed feet that help them swim. A toad's body is very different. A toad's body is wide and round. It means its legs are much shorter than a frog's. That means that toads can hop and walk, but they cannot jump. Most toads also do not have webbed feet. They also don't need them because they do not spend much time swimming. Frogs and toads have different eyes. A frog's eyes are higher and rounded than a toad's, and they often bulge out. So, in this particular section of this book, I've learned that a frog's body and a toad's body are different. Toad's body is going to be thin and long. They also have longer legs because they have to jump, while toads are wide and maybe a little bit fatter, and their legs are short because they don't have to jump as far, or in fact, they can't even jump at all. They do a lot more hopping. And even their eyes are different, which you can kind of see in this picture right here. Frogs and toads come in many different sizes. In 2012, scientists discovered the world's smallest frog in Papua New Guinea. This frog is about the same size as a fly. The largest frog is the African Goliath frog. This huge frog can grow to 3 feet long and weigh up to 7 pounds. The largest toads live in Central and South America. They can grow up to 11 inches long. The smallest toad is less than an inch long. All right, what I love about this map right here is it kind of shows you where frogs and toads live in orange. In red, it shows you where only frogs can live, and in yellow, it tells you where only toads live. So if you could see, frogs and toads live almost everywhere except for Antarctica. But if you look at North America, which is where we live, only frogs can live up in the Alaska area and right up here north in like Canada. And then only toads can live in this part of Africa. That's like where the Sahara Desert is. So it's very dry and there's not a lot of bodies of water. Smooth or rough. Touching one of these animals is another way to tell if it is a frog or a toad. A frog has smooth, wet skin. Some frogs look slimy because they are covered with a layer of mucus. This mucus keeps a frog's skin from drying out. A toad's skin is rough and dry. It is often covered with bumps. Many frogs live in brightly colored. Poison dart frogs live in the rainforest. Their skin can be bright blue, red, yellow, purple, or orange. Other frogs are bright green. Some toads are brightly colored, but most are not. A toad is likely to be brown or dark green. So here I've learned that even a frog's skin is different from a toad's. A toad's skin is going to be bumpy and it's going to be rough looking, while a frog will have smooth skin and almost kind of mucusy because they like to stay wet. But even then, frogs come in bright colors, while toads tend to stay brown and what did the text say? Or dark green. And even at my house, we have frogs and toads. And you can easily tell the difference because we actually have some tree frogs that like to climb up on our window, and they're bright green. While the toads that are kind of in our back patio area, they're kind of rough looking. And they don't like to hang out in the windows. They just like to hang out near the ground to catch the bugs down there. Home sweet home. Frogs and toads are found almost everywhere in the world. They lived on every continent except Antarctica. However, these amphibians do live in different places. Frogs have to live near water. They need the water to keep their skin from drying out. This is why you often see frogs in ponds or lakes. Many kinds of frogs live in the rainforest where it is wet and warm all the time. Toads do not need to stay wet. You are more likely to find a toad on land than in water. Many kinds of toads live in woods. These animals can live in the deserts. The Saharan desert toad lives in the southwestern part of the United States where it is very dry. So frogs live near water, while toads can live anywhere that's really dry. All right, last page. What's for dinner? Both frogs and toads are carnivores. That means they eat meat. Frogs and toads eat insects and spiders, and they have a very interesting way of catching their prey. Frogs and toads have long, sticky tongues. These amphibians sit very still, waiting for an insect to fly or crawl past. Frogs and toads have big eyes that help them to see their prey. When the frog or toad sees its prey, it shoots its tongue out of its mouth and grabs the insect. Then it pulls its tongue back in and swallows its prey whole. A frog or toad can do this because its tongue is attached to the front of its jaw. This lets the frog or toad flip its tongue out very quickly. The bigger the frog, the bigger its prey. Some large frogs can even eat baby turtles, mice, and smaller frogs. So in this section, we learned that frogs and toads are both carnivores. That means they eat meat, and in fact, they hunt with the same way. They hunt by sticking out their tongues and catching the bugs or whatever else they want to eat nearby. All right, so now that we've read this story, let's compare and contrast frogs and toads. I feel like I have a good understanding. Now, on this slide right here, you're going to see a Venn diagram. Now, a Venn diagram, boys and girls, is a way for us to compare and contrast two different things. So on this side, you see frogs. So all of the differences about frogs. So all the things that I've learned about frogs that do not happen with toads is going to go in this section. While in this section on the right, you see toads. So everything that I've learned about toads that toads can do but frogs cannot do will go on this side. But you see this side in the middle where those circles are interlocking with each other? That is where we're going to put how they're the same. So our contrast will go right in the middle and our comparisons will go out to the side. So I have some of these facts written out all above, and I'm just going to pick one and I'm going to drag it to where I think it needs to go. So let's go ahead and start with shorter legs. Okay, well, I remember from the book that I read that toads have shorter legs, so I'm going to put it right there. All right, let me look for the other fact. Longer legs is over here. I know frogs have longer legs to help them jump. All right, let's see. Good swimmers. Okay, well, I learned that frogs are good swimmers. They like to live near the water. Body wide and round. Ooh, I know that's a toad fact right there. Toads have a body that's wide and round. Ooh, amphibians. I remember reading in the beginning part of that story that both are amphibians, so I'm going to stick it in the middle right here. Ooh, life cycle. They both go through a life cycle. Remember, they start off as an egg, they go into a tadpole, and then eventually they become a frog or a toad. Ooh, sticky tongues to catch prey. They both have a sticky tongue that is used to catch their prey. Smooth skin. Oh, a frog has smooth skin, while a toad has bumpy skin. Spend more time on dry land. That is definitely a toad. Spend more time near land. That needs to be changed to spend more time near water. Spend more time near water. There we go. And then finally, carnivores. They are both carnivores. So I'm going to stick that right in the middle right there. So let's take a look at what we have learned. So what I have learned between frogs and toads is there are some similarities, but there's also some differences. Some similarities, so some same things. The contrast between frogs and toads is that they're both amphibians. They both go through a life cycle. They have sticky tongues to help catch prey. And they're both carnivores, meaning they eat meats. So let's talk about some differences. Well, I know one difference is that a toad has shorter legs, while frogs have longer legs to use for jumping. A frog's body is long and lean, but a toad's body is wide and round. I know a frog has smooth, mucousy skin, but a toad has bumpy skin. And I know that toads like to spend more time on dry land, but a frog would like to spend time near water.
Wow, we have learned so much today about frogs and toads. Thank you so much for being a super reader and helping me to compare and contrast them. Next time that you read a book about two different animals, I want you to compare and contrast those two animals. I know you can. We'll see you next time, boys and girls. Thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye!